Hi, and welcome to the Metamorphosis Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Elliott, and it is my purpose to bring to all of you listening conversations that may invoke a new idea, a new perspective to help you through those sticky places, those crunchy places, and to also seek out the people that I feel inspired by that see life from a different lens, and bringing them on the show and having a conversation so that they can share their actual lived experience. They can share their wisdom with all of us to hopefully bridge us into a higher level of living. So for the next 30 seconds to about a minute or so, I'm going to be plugging the work that I do and asking for a donation. So if you don't want to participate, you can just fast forward and dive right into the show. Okay, so Metamorphosis. There's so much work that goes into this podcast, setting up with guests and the timing and the editing and all these pieces and team members that come in. So my ask for you is, if you're tuning into this and you're gaining value out of this, just show me some love. Go down into the show notes. There's a donation link there. Send whatever feels good for you, even if it's just $1. Every dollar goes a long way to support, the services that I use and the monthly subscriptions. It'd be so greatly appreciated. And if you personally want to work with me, just contact me. My email will be down in the show notes. My background is I'm an intuitive coach and a relationship expert. And I work currently, depending on when you're listening to this, in a 3-month coaching container one-on-one. And I have a group offering coming up. So if you want to know about that, shoot me a message. But with my one-on-one container, the most common feedback that I get is I create a container of safety and allow people to feel emotionally and relationally met in ways that they've never experienced in their life. And over the years, what I've found in my own healing journey is when there's that level of safety, that's where the trauma heals. That's where the insights drop in. That's where the gifts get initiated and activated, and to create that life that you're really wanting to live. This is a container where if you've tried reading all the books and you've tried mindsetting your way into this reality you're looking for and it's just not happening, this is where I come in. Today we have a special guest with us. His name is Robert Bill. He is the dad work coach. The handle is @UncommonDad. It'll be in the show notes. Go follow him on Instagram. He is the man that helps men be the best father they can be for their family. I'm so excited to have him on the show. A friend, Nate Feathers, recommended that we bring him on, and I'm so glad that we did. We are going to dive into a really juicy conversation, so I really encourage you to listen all the way to the end. Rob is going to be giving us some powerful tools on how to practically be in a more grounded, resourceful, empowered place to show up and parent in the way that we know we want to. So buckle up. Here we go. I really see you as focused on your physical well-being. And what I really love you bridging is how important that is to keep that going and to really show up as a dad in a really good way, and to keep up with, I'm a father also of a 2-year-old, and I get it. It's like to keep up with that vitality and meet them in the place of their development that they need to be met in physically, not just emotionally and with words, but physically meeting them in that life energy. I love that you embody that, you model it, you speak to it, you call it out, you live it, you breathe it. And I'm just excited to see where this conversation goes. And when I'm watching you in your world, through the lens of Instagram, I can really see these principles that you live by, which I imagine just didn't come out of nowhere. And where I always get curious to start is the journey from where you came from to become the dad, the dad
Yeah.
coach and the dad's work coach. And, how did you get to this place of becoming the uncommon dad? Like what was Rob's childhood like? I'd love to hear like little bits of like what was relationship to your dad like that's led you to where you are now.
Yeah, well, I'll try to keep it concise. Uh, Believe it or not, I never wanted kids. Uh, our parents knew better than to ask us, like, when are you gonna have kids? Because my wife would let him have it, and I, being the feminized male that I was, would just sit back and let her lead that way. Really interesting thing. Uh, I didn't want kids because of all these stories about what happens when you have kids. What happens? Well, you never have time for you again. Your relationship with your wife will be changed forever. You're never going to get it on ever again. She doesn't care about you. You're never going to have time to take care of your body again. All these like horror stories, all these really victim narrative stories. And also growing up in the 90s, uh, I don't really remember any movies with any positive role models,
Yeah.
positive fathers. I remember Hook and his kids on the airplane drew the picture of the plane crashing. Everybody had parachutes except for dad, right?
I
He's like, why?
yeah.
Well, because he was never present. So even we watched the Santa Claus not too long ago, and even in that movie, Tim Allen, like totally not present dad, totally
Yep.
gets too busy with his girlfriends and forgets to pick his son up. And so this is what I grew up with. This is what I was conditioned with. And I had a wonderful childhood and still, like so many of us, grew up in a household of divorce. And my
Mm,
parents got divorced when I was in second grade. Before that, uh, I only really remember two times, maybe three, but definitely two right now, that my dad got on the ground and played with me.
uh,
And I remember playing Super Mario Brothers, not the game, but I was like, Dad, we're gonna be Super Mario. I'm gonna be Mario, you're gonna be Luigi, and like we were jumping around on the bed. Like, I remember that. I remember a time when I was like trying to tuck pillows into my shoulders so I could be like the Chicago Bears players and trying to tackle him and looking up and be like, wow, how are you so big? How does anybody do this? I remember those two moments. Those are the two moments that I have though, because my dad was working two jobs to provide for us. And when he was home, he was working on projects around the house. I remember that. I remember him working on the pool, working on the yard, all of these things. And it's important for us as men to look back and be like, what are the things that I want to do better and recognize where our parents came from. My dad's, his dad was in World War II. He was a traveling adding machine repairman. So, from what I understand, he was gone for 8 to 12 weeks at a time. His dad wasn't around. His dad was working a lot. His dad died when my dad was 18, and having a household with five other kids in it, my dad being the second oldest, he had to work to provide for that little family. He had to teach his mom how to drive. Holy cow. So looking back, I'm like, yeah, I wish he had played with me more, but I see the program that he was running.
yeah.
And holy shit, I'm so grateful for that. So I can take the superpower of that and at the same time look at my kids and be like, well, how can I do a little bit better? How can
Hmm.
I take this, make it a superpower, and how can I heal it so that they receive it in a constructive way?
Hmm.
So my parents got divorced when I was in second grade. 90s kid, spent a lot of time watching TV, so much time. We were in the last generation where your parents are like, you got this. You're home from school.
Mm.
I'm still at work. You know how to make mac and cheese. You're good.
Totally.
So I watched a ton of TV, and I think like so many boys, I loved knights. I loved chivalry. Man, I was all in on that. I loved military stuff, and I really loved Westerns. Westerns were like captivating to me, and I loved the good and the bad and the ugly. Questionable whether I should have been watching it or not, but I loved it. I loved Clint Eastwood. I loved Blondie. And I loved this idea. I didn't have the words for it at the time, but I loved the stoicism of this stoic hero. He didn't feel anything. I don't think I've ever seen him make a facial expression. Like he just, you,
Totally.
you weren't sure if he was good or bad because he never really emoted. And He just like sucked it up and got it done.
Yeah.
And so that, because I lived with my mom, was the model of manhood that I picked up. So
Yeah.
that was another program. We received this stuff from our cultural programming, from culture, from school, all that stuff too. Uh, in fifth grade, my mom got remarried to my stepfather at the time. He was a business owner. That was really cool. He ran his own business. Like, this guy's really cool. He worked all hours. He was HVAC tech, and he'd come home at the end of the day and sit on the couch, watch TV, and have a beer. Okay, so there's another program for me. Like, work
Mhm.
hard, sit on the couch, have a beer. I remember crying at the dinner table trying to do my math homework because I just didn't get it. I struggle with math. I'm
Mhm.
not math brained. And he was really, really more direct than I had experienced growing up. So I was crying. It felt really bad. This is a man who was sitting at the kitchen table one time. I had my arms on the table, and he was like, my dad used to stab me in the arm with a fork and leave it in my arm
Oh
when
my
I do that.
God.
And he didn't do anything, but I was fucking scared.
Yeah.
And I remember the times when I could middle of the night, I'd wake up because he and my mom were having physical fights. I remember hearing that, and they thought I
Oh,
was asleep.
yeah.
And this is a man. It's again, these are the things that happened in my life. It's important as men that we recognize them. We're like, okay, I don't want this pattern, and that we also recognize the men that our father figures were. This is a man who had a father who I don't know if he ever beat my stepdad, but definitely his mom, and who watched his mom commit suicide in front of him.
Ooh.
This is a man who had alcohol issues and who ended up spending time in jail because of that. These are the programs that I was given. As
Mhm.
kids, we're sponges. We don't have a choice.
Mhm.
And then fast forwarding, get out of high school, go to college, come out into the workforce, start working, personal training industry. And I just run these programs. I run these patterns. Within a year and a half, I go from being a trainer and weight loss coach to being asked to come into management. Why? Because I work really hard. I don't say anything about it. I'll put in the extra hours and I do really good work. I mean, we don't think of it in the personal training industry, but I was doing $10,000 months. Turns out personal training's about money. Who knew? But they liked that. So they were like, hey, we want you to be a manager. And I had this leadership potential because other people tended to flock to me and listen to me. I climbed that ladder. My dad was the vice president of a bank. So I was like, well, I want a title too. I want to make money. So that was the program I got. So I just went with it. I met this girl, never wanted to get married. Why not? Or why would I? Double divorce. My stepdad got divorced. My mom and my dad got divorced. Why would I ever want to do that?
Mhm.
But against all odds, I was like, I really like this one. I really
Mhm.
like this one. And climbing that corporate ladder and making $70,000 in my 20s, which was a lot of money for me. I was
Yeah.
like, holy cow, this is really cool. So I'm like, well, I really like her. I got money. Let's buy her $12,000 custom engagement ring and get married here, right? And that's like, whoa, price tag, holy cow. And I'm working at a fitness club where everybody around me is driving Audis and BMWs. So I was
Mhm.
like, well, this must be what I'm supposed to do. Not consciously, this is unconscious stuff. I'm gonna
Yeah.
get myself this sexy new Volkswagen CC. It's the first one with the LED lights that looks like the Audi. I'm gonna get that.
Mm.
So I'm making these choices. I have this title. I'm in line to run my own training department, and with the idea that I'm gonna be the GM of my own club.
Mhm.
I'm climbing this ladder. I've got it all on paper, making good money. I got a sexy car. My fiance said yes. I got this $12,000 custom engagement ring and working 50 to 60-hour weeks. End of the month, 10:30, 11:30 at night. We haven't hit our budget goals yet. So, honey, I'm not going to be home. I don't know when I'm coming home. Like, just go to sleep. And I've got it all on paper. I'm working out hard, doing CrossFit workouts. I'm ripped AF, doing cyclical keto. I got it. Until one day when I leave work early, and don't worry, guys, I asked my boss, I got cleared to leave early and take my wife on a date, taking her to a White Sox game. That's Major League Baseball. It's questionable whether or not they're major because they don't really do much. And I'm driving on I-94, my car, my CC, and I'm digging my fingernails into the steering wheel, the well-worn fingernail grooves that I've got in there, which I didn't know isn't normal. It's not normal to have fingernail grooves embedded into your steering wheel, but this is my life, right?
Yeah.
And I'm driving and I'm like, it feels like I'm in the middle of a CrossFit WOD, like I'm trying to catch my breath.
Mm.
My chest is tight, my whole body. You guys, if you've experienced high blood pressure, you know it just feels like everything's constricted, especially in your neck, your shoulders, your
Mm.
head. And I'm struggling to catch my breath. Heart is like bumping out of my chest, like Roger Rabbit when he sees Jessica. That happened to me when I was a kid too. Man, she was hot. And I'm like, this isn't right. I'm on the verge of panic, going on a date. This was not right.
Mhm.
And it was in this moment that I was like, now I see that I'm out of alignment here. And that's not what I thought at the time, but the pain
Mm.
teacher was knocking. I could no longer hide that I had excessively high blood pressure for somebody in their 20s. I could no longer hide that in order to get by, because I was so exhausted, I had to slam caffeine. I had to slam caffeine right before I went from college into the training industry. I would have 24 ounces of espresso just to get my day started working at
Oof.
Dunkin' Donuts. And I just continued that caffeine
Oof.
consumption. Now you probably doing more than that, not you, but a lot of guys listening to this, because these pre-workouts, man, we don't even think about it anymore, but we lean on this stuff for
Mhm.
energy. I was for sure. I'd go to porn between 3 to 10 times a day just to like feel better. So many of us pick up that habit because, well, we see porn as kids, but then we learn to use it to manage stress and just get a
Mhm.
hit to like feel good for a moment. And
Mhm.
that can turn into validation issues. That was definitely me, 3 to 10 times a day. And sometimes I'd turn it on in the car on the way home, just like feel something. Hmm.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it's probably happened to everybody, so we don't even think it's a big deal. And in the evenings, my wife and I get home, we turn on Jimmy Fallon or something, and we smash some food, pass out on the couch, and we do it again the next day after having a glass of bourbon or some wine. I couldn't hide this stuff anymore. I couldn't hide that I was spending more money than I was earning, and I was slowly digging a massive debt hole. And even though we were both living the dream, doing the things that we thought we were supposed to do, my wife and I, even though we'd have, binge food and alcohol on the weekends, we were more distant than ever. I could
Mhm.
come home on a Thursday night and she would meet me in the door in lingerie. Like, holy shit, I won the lottery. Freshly made dinner. And you know what I'd do? I'd eat dinner and I'd pass the fuck out on the couch.
Mhm.
I had erectile dysfunction issues,
Mhm.
but I ignored that. I just covered it all over with all the things that we do: food, alcohol, porn, video games, television, hard workouts, CrossFit, working hard, all of this stuff so that I didn't have to deal with it.
Mhm.
And that was when I was like, wow, I really got to change. And so I had been listening to Ben Greenfield. I learned about Wim Hof from him, and he had some meditation guests. So I was like, well, my grandfather died with 20, I think it was 26 medications on his bedside table. This is a man who had his
Oof.
first heart attack, or actually not his first heart attack. He had quadruple bypass surgery. I think it was at the age of 42. This is in my bloodline,
Mhm.
and I will not end up that way. My great grandfather on my dad's side had a stroke while he's performing in a band on stage. This is in my bloodline. And
Mhm.
if I don't do something, because both of those are stress related conditions, if I don't do something, that's my future. It's really easy to ignore it until it's not anymore.
Mhm.
And that was my wake up call. So I was like, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do this breath work thing. I heard Wim Hof does this crazy breath work and cold therapy where he can mitigate the symptoms of, it's not Ebola. That would be crazy. E. coli.
Yeah.
Ebola, I'd be even more impressed, Wim. If you figured that out, let us know. E. coli. And I was like, I'm going all in here. And so I did. And I started to feel less anxious significantly, no more panic after that. And I started to become aware that the ladder I had been climbing in my life was against the wrong wall. that the life I was living was for somebody, but it wasn't what I wanted. I didn't want any of this.
Mm,
I wanted a deep connection with my wife, but I was just
mhm,
going down the same path of workaholism and covering it over with alcohol and the I'm just gonna, grit it out and get shit done that I learned from Westerns. I was just
mhm.
running these
Yeah,
programs
right.
that I had inherited, right? And eventually I stepped down from those positions. I kept stepping down and down and down because I was like, guys, this just isn't for me. My heart's not, that's not where my heart is. And eventually, people started to come to me to ask for my help. They're like, "You've changed a lot. Can you teach me? Like, you seem so chill all the time now." And I was like, "Well, yeah, sure." People started to come to me and ask, "Can I just stand next to you?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but why?" They're like, "Hey, it's really calming to be in your presence. I just feel more calm when I'm around you." And I was like, "Well, that's weird, but yeah, sure." And since people were asking me to teach them, I was like, I should probably go get certified in this. It's a personal thing. I like to make sure I actually know what I'm doing before I teach you anything. So I was like, what's the oldest thing out there? I'm a history nerd. I have a history degree. Yoga. Yeah, that's old. That's 5,000 years old. So I went to the Temple of Kriya Yoga in Chicago and enrolled in meditation teacher training and then yoga teacher training. Spent 2 years doing that. And then I was like, I'm a trainer. I want to know the science. So I immersed myself in Soma breathwork training to get some of that, some heart math training as well, and realized that the reason why I was changing is because the breathwork and the meditation I was doing was changing my nervous system. I was inducing a state called coherence through my breath and meditation and how I'd use my vision and how I would use my movement. And that coherence actually means balance between the sympathetic nervous system, that's your fight or flight response, that's designed for a bear, and parasympathetic nervous system, which is where we're supposed to be almost all the time. That's your relaxation response. I am and was sympathetic dominant. So
Mhm,
that's why I was anxious. That's why I was panicky. That's why I was self-medicating all the time. That's why I punched a hole in the wall when some old guy bought my wife flowers when she was hostessing a restaurant because, well, I was living there. It's me
mhm,
versus you, reactions only. I was learning that through these practices, I could induce that coherent state, that's that balanced state, and get myself out of fight or flight, high beta brain waves, and access everything else alpha, flow, theta, and delta, the brain waves of healing and deep connection, REM sleep, but also deep connection with self and other.
mhm,
Oh, all of a sudden, I realized these are technologies. I'm changing my nervous system. My blood
mhm,
pressure has gone down, and I'm emitting something that's called a field. Well, I didn't know this, but your heart emits an electromagnetic field measurable for at least 3 feet around your body. It's why you can walk into a room and look at a guy and be like, I like that guy. Yeah,
mhm,
fuck that guy. Because your nervous system is picking up everything that's happening in their nervous system.
mhm,
This is why people were walking up to me and being like, can I just stand next to you? Because
mhm,
I was emitting a safe harbor. This is what it means to be a safe harbor as a dad for our kids. It's more than just like being this pillar. This is how you actually embody it. This is how you be the lighthouse for your family or the rock that they can crash over at the level of your heart. Your nervous system actually emits this feeling of safety
mhm,
for them. So I was learning that, okay, I could train coherence. I could also increase my heart rate variability, which I knew through fitness, but that's your resilience capacity, how much pressure you can handle in your body.
mhm,
And I was boosting that through meditation and breath work. So all of a sudden, my capacity to handle stress was going up too. And I wasn't getting rattled by the same things anymore.
mhm.
And I just kept going. COVID happened. For years, I'd been afraid to start my own business. I got laid off and I was like, well, here we are. And because of all the work that I had done, the literally the day that I got the call that we were laid off, I just called up my clients. I was like, hey guys, we're going. Here we go. And men started to reach out to me at that point. Men were
Um,
like, hey, secretly, this is what we do. Uh, I need your help. I've seen what you've done. I want help. These are men that were like fit AF that made a lot of money. These are professional bodybuilders that had heart attacks. They were like, Nobody knows this, but I'm struggling and I want your help. And that's when I started to work with men.
Mm.
Then
How many years ago was that?
that was COVID. So that was
Oh, yeah,
2020,
yeah.
2020, right? Then I'm working out in spring, finished a set of barbell walking lunges in my driveway. The sun's coming through the clouds, warming my skin on this cool spring day. My wife stands at the back fence and it's this blue, like it's this like slate blue paint that's peeling. You can see the rotted wood underneath. I remember it. And she says, I'm pregnant.
Oof.
And this is how the altercation went. Because for our entire relationship, we had joked about this like every other day. Every day she was like, I'm pregnant. I was like, yeah, right. So that's the same reaction I was having internally, but I was like,
Mm.
don't say anything yet because she might be joking, but she might not.
Mm.
And then the other thing is that all these things, all the programs from my own fatherhood, all the the victim stories about here's what's going to happen when you become a dad were also in my head. And just like I said, when I had realized the ladder that I was climbing was against the wrong wall, I was like, well, fuck that.
Mm.
Just because this is somebody's fatherhood story doesn't mean it has to be mine. And I went all in on applying these practices to showing up as the father, the man, and the husband that I wanted to be for my family. I read
Mm.
this book called Dad versus Baby. I don't remember who wrote it. Ashton Kutcher reviewed it. He loved it. The greatest thing ever. And I get it was meant to be a comedy, but the whole thing was just this victim story. Like, your life's going to change forever. Everything's going to smell like poo. You're never going to have time to do things. And I read that and I was just like, this just sounds terrible.
Yeah.
That sounds hard.
Yeah,
And the
gross.
thing about fatherhood is, yeah, it's challenging, but it doesn't have to be hard. I am
Mhm.
not one to want to live a life of hardship, nor do I want my kids to experience that life because there's a certain helplessness and hopelessness that comes about. Halo fans, I want to live on Legendary. And so I'm going to take on the challenges and I'm going to apply all these school skills, these inner strength skills that I built through meditation, breath work, yoga, and more, learning how to actually use pressure points on my body to calm the fear center in my brain so I could go back to those old memories and all this trauma, quote unquote trauma that I've got, and actually work through it. I could apply this to fatherhood and
Mm.
start showing up in a new way for my kids. And more than that, give them that example because I understood the programs I inherited from my parents' example. Because habits are not taught, they're caught. Doesn't
Mhm.
matter what you say, it's what you do that you're going to hand down, even the things that you think that they don't see. And that's how I got here.
Mm. Yeah, beautiful, epic journey. It's like the hero's journey, and I love feeling that from you. And I'd love to go into that piece. So it's like what I'm really hearing is there was this like what really like this is the work that I love to do is bringing the awareness of what the body is expressing where a lot of people will go into dissociation or numb out and not realize the body's saying like, hey, I'm here too, and I'm not liking how this is going, like, and I'm really hearing how you found those practices to really nurture and tend your nervous system to teach it down regulation from it sounded like you're in a lot of like hyper arousal and like just exhausting your adrenals and just like teaching through the breath work and the meditation of like down regulation to experience instead of dysregulation regulation,
Yeah.
that parasympathetic you're talking about. And I love feeling that place. Like, I love how you spoke to that because this is, for any men that are listening that, haven't found these tools or mechanisms yet, this technology that Rob's talking about. It's like these are technologies. They're ancient, sacred technologies that help, how in my language is like help the warrior show up to battle, like help the warrior show up to the field of today's reality of the challenges of parenting without that being modeled, like disconnected fathers who were isolated and sent to war and like came home just in shame spirals with PTSD and no technologies available because of, the separation in our cultures. And so that gets passed down. And, here we are trying to parent, but then here comes the conditioning just playing out the same way that was learned. What I, really hear you sharing that you were watching that play out and you caught it and you learned and embodied the technologies to regulate your nervous system so you can actually show up in the way that you consciously want to, like by choice of like I really what I hear and what you're sharing is like I know what it feels like to be parented in a field of dysfunction. I'm gonna create something different for myself, my partner, my kids. And something that I want to hear more about for those who are listening who haven't found the technologies, what so far I've heard, the breath work, getting trained with Soma, going for the yoga training, meditation. And now I'm curious, so those men who are listening, like, oh, lean into any of those that you're pulled to. And what I want to hear now is like, how does this translate, as a father? So you have two kids, right?
Yep.
So, like, how does this look in the day-to-day life of parenting? And something I want to circle back to is like you talked about the tapping when you notice your nervous system kind of going into an activation. But maybe first let's explore like how does that look? What it like in the day-to-day life of being dad, and there's the bigness of all the life energy of the kids, and there's the conditioning that can come up and want to react to what's happening in that situation. Like, how do you catch that? What do you do? And like, what are the tools, or what does that look like when you're parenting, and how to, yeah, we'll start there.
Yeah. It brings me back to the second round of my program. I had a guy come on that he was an Air Force veteran, and he was feeling he had hypervigilance. He was always like situation assessment when his kids were playing on the playground. Like where's the attacker going to come from, and how do I mitigate the threat immediately? And he just couldn't like chill and be with his kids. And not that you listening to this are experiencing that, but I guarantee that there's something happening that's distracting you from the present moment. And he was like, "Yeah, man, I wish that I could remember to take a breath in the moment." And what I told him was this: don't. That's terrible advice because, as Mike Tyson said, when or everyone has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. You're going to get hit in the mouth. Whether you have a surprise tax liability of $2,500, you get in a car accident, or your kids throw their peanut butter jelly face down on the floor, and now there's peanut butter on the floor, and you just cleaned it. Right? You
Totally.
just done cleaning it. Life's going to hit you in the mouth, and you
Hmm.
have a plan to be a patient dad or to like be a nurturing dad until that happens. And when that happens, you're going to drop to the level of your programming. And practicing, if you're not training, that programming is what you inherited.
Hmm.
So eventually, my advice for you is remember to breathe in the moment. But first, remember to train the way that you want to show up. I
Yeah.
spent the better half of last year reaching out to thousands of men. I had conversations with 350 of them. And a lot of them were like, "Oh, I wish I could train but more consistently. I wish I could eat better." And I spent 10 years in the fitness industry. I've seen this all play out. We
Hmm.
have best intentions and then we fall off. Why? Well, the more I paid attention and dug into it, it's because men don't know how to manage stress. So we fall
Hmm.
into those default patterns. It's the Mike Tyson quote.
Yeah.
We have a plan till we get hit in the mouth. And when that happens, you're going to drop to the level of your training. So you need life of an uncommon dad. You need to do the inner training and the outer training. You got to take care of your body too, because the samurai, the Spartans, all these warrior traditions, all these ancient traditions knew, and they would laugh at you for letting your body go because this is your most valuable, efficient, and effective tool and or weapon. This body, this is the most complex technology in the entire universe, and we're just letting it rust and
Yeah.
fall apart. So you have to take care of your body and you have to do the training that's going to enable you to show up not as a better dad, because I don't know what that is, but as a more patient dad, a more
Hmm.
present dad and husband, a more engaged, more energetic. and more deeply connected man, husband, and father. And
Hmm.
there's tools that you can use to do that. There's different breathwork techniques, ways of meditating. There's ways of moving your body. There's a lot of hardcore flexibility in yoga in our program because it's an ancient technology. One, you're going to get fit AF, but two, it's literally ancient chiropractic. Realign your spine so you get proper flow of information in the nervous system. And then if you had a stress problem because you were out of alignment, all of a sudden that's fixed. Holy cow.
Cool.
You need to be training this stuff every day, and it doesn't have to be complicated. I'll let you in. I'll open the kimono a little bit. Here I teach the set, shift, and reset protocol inside of Rise, inside of my work with all the men that I work with. If you want a more level nervous system, you want to be more patient, then you're going to do your breath work for anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes, because that's going to send the signal that this is the new set point that I want.
Hmm.
I want this level of calm. I want to breathe long and slow, 6 seconds in and 6 seconds out all the time. And then when your kids throw their sandwich on the floor or something worse happens, like they get in a car accident if they're driving, well, then this is your default pattern. You're less likely to react and more likely to respond because you're not in that beta, high stressed survival me versus you brain. When you
Hmm.
can breathe, you can use your full brain capacity. When you're under stress, you lose 80% of the blood flow to the thinking areas of your brain. You're literally dumb.
Hmm.
So, being able to breathe like this, training it first, 5 to 20 minutes every day, and then when things happen, you get to reset. Oh, my son's melting down because his pot back there wasn't in the holder the way that he wanted to. Well, I'm just going to breathe for a second. And instead of being like, buddy, it's fine, it's okay. Well, what do you need, dude? How do you want it to be? Okay, I rearranged it. Is that good? All right, well, let's go. You get to
Hmm.
respond to them rather than reacting in the me versus you. I need you to do this my way, my attachment to the way I want this situation to
Yeah.
go pattern. So set, shift, and reset. You have to train whatever it is that you want: patience, presence, engagement, deep connection, energy every single day. And then when before going into this meeting, I was like, hey, sorry, I didn't know you were here for 30 seconds because I was doing my breath work to get coherent, to get centered before we came on here.
Mhm.
One really great way for us to do this as dads is whether you work from home or you're commuting, right before you transition, you get out of that car, take 60 seconds to drop into a 6 second inhale and exhale. It's called the circular breath.
Mhm.
Scientific studies show that it's the most effective breath for inducing coherence. It's that centered state. It's what it's what
Yeah.
all the yogis are calling centeredness. It's coherence. That's what it's called in science. You can
And
shift.
and heart math, like heart
Yep.
math uses that, but it's 5 seconds. But same, it's
Yeah.
that same rhythmic circular breathing.
Yeah, technically it's like 5.67, but
Oh
nobody
yeah.
needs to count that. Nobody needs to count that. So I just go 5 to 6 seconds, you pick.
Yeah.
And so set, do your 5 to 20 minute practices, shift in between events. I literally sat down here on the floor yesterday when I was making breakfast. It's a highly stimulating time in our house. And I was like, I just need to breathe for 60 seconds.
Totally.
And my son will sit down and do it with me because he sees me do it.
Yeah, bam. Yeah, that I want to touch on and highlight and slow that down because that's fucking it right there. This is what I found so cool, and I love that you just named that is this is the repatterning and imprinting of the nervous system that's different from your generational line. And I've watched this with my son too, is they are sponges. Their nervous systems are sponges. They're not taking in the belief of the world based off of the words we're saying. That's a part of it, but really it's what the language of our nervous system is speaking. And when you drop down to the floor and take care of yourself in that way, God, little ones want to bond with dad. They like, let's be in life together, let's adventure together. And so they just copy and model and then download the information of your nervous system. And I love that you shared that of like, yeah, of course they drop down to breathe with you.
Mhm.
You know, like one of my favorite things in the morning is I'll wake up and it's so routine and ritual. Like my 2-year-old son, Cedar, he'll like wake up and then like, okay, little buddy, like good morning, da da da. We do our thing and we do our first little morning routine. And then he's like, Papa, go to office, breath work. And then he comes running down with me and we lay down and he like studies my nervous system. Like his nervous system's just taking it in. And I look over and I now at the point where it's happened enough where I look over and he's like, okay. And he starts cycling the breath. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the most enriching bonding experience with my son because that's healthy bonding. That's like teaching, the generation to come of like how to regulate the nervous system, which like then the prefrontal cortex can develop in a good way. And then great, now you have once that stage of development comes, yay, now you actually have executive function. Now you can
Yeah.
actually respond to life's challenges. Oh, I'd love if you have any more, like some more examples of like those moments where, the kids are adopting the new way that's different from what you grew up.
Yeah, we have this misconception that kids can self-regulate.
Yeah.
They can't. They're gonna learn it from you. And
Yes.
at the point where their brain and their nervous system matures and they can begin to regulate on their own, they're going to run the programs that you have given them. And it's so important that we do this our own on our own, but we also invite them into our practice. On the weekends, like
Yeah.
I'll practice in a place where my son can interact with me. I posted it to my story last Saturday. It was like, Dad's feeling a little irritated. I'm gonna go do some movements. I went out there, I did some shaking, I did some yoga, and then I sat down and did some Kapalabhati breath, and then sat in meditation, and he just came with me and did it with me.
Yeah.
He just
Sitting on your
and
lap.
yeah, and the thing is, we have to model to them that we can have emotion
Yeah.
and
Big
constructive
one.
ways to move through it.
Yeah.
Hey, Dad's feeling a lot of irritation in his body right now. It doesn't have to be more than that.
Hmm.
Maybe with an adult you can talk about what's going on, but like, hey, Dad's feeling kind of irritated right now.
Hmm.
Hmm, this is interesting. I'm gonna take a couple breaths. You want to breathe with me? Or my son at the grocery store, commonplace for incidents, is he's melting down because he didn't have the cart that he wanted. And his buddies, his little bear, wasn't in there the way that he wanted it to, and he
Yeah.
starts losing it. And I will change the environment right away in those situations. Cool. This isn't working out. Let's go into the foyer. I'll grab him. We'll come in there and I'll let him feel. And when he starts to calm down, he starts to come down. He starts to come down.
Mm.
And I'm just there with him. I'll just literally like kneel on the floor with him, hug him if he wants it. If he doesn't want it, he's like, "No, Dad." And then I'm just like, "Cool." You're like, you can
Yeah.
like wail here. Then I ask him, "What are you feeling right now?" I'm feeling sad. Okay. I hear that you're feeling really sad. Do you want to be a monkey? What do you think we should do about this? You want to be a monkey? Do you want to be a lion? Kids like to play. As adults,
Um,
we've lost that.
mm.
One of the most effective ways to move stress through the body is one, to acknowledge that it's there. If you
Yeah.
can acknowledge it,
That's
allow
important.
yourself to feel it, it'll resolve within 90 seconds most of the time.
Yeah.
Then, if it doesn't, if you can get the body involved, all animals do this. All of them, after a stressful event, they'll literally shake, discharge the pent up energy in the body. You
Hmm.
can talk about positive and negative ions. You can talk about lightning and grounding. And to reset the nervous system, shaking stimulates the vagus nerve. That's the biggest nerve in the body, innervates the parasympathetic nervous system, brings into relaxation. Holy cow. Animals do this naturally? Yes, they do. So
Hmm.
what I'm doing is, okay, I'm acknowledging your feeling. So he might not have the vocabulary for it, but I'm like, hey, I think I imagine you're feeling really sad right now, man. Yeah, that's okay. What do we want to do? You want to be a lion? So we're gonna play lion. We're gonna get the body moving. We're gonna roar, right? And then what does the
Hmm.
monkey do? He bangs on his chest. We're tapping. We're using pressure points. These pressure points link to your amygdala. the fear and stress center in the brain that's all fired up when you or they are having a meltdown. I know
Mm.
this because I've studied it. He doesn't need to know it. He's just going to be like, oh, when I get mad, I'm going to do this
Yeah.
thing. Ah,
Yeah.
ah. And then I feel better. And I'm like, hey, you good, bud? You want to go back? Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
we're done. Then
Yeah.
it's done. I never had that as a kid. I had to go figure that out after meditation teacher training, after breath work, when my Goswami Kriyananda was like, just witness the thoughts and tell them you'll deal with them later. And I'm like, well, what
Mm.
about the ones that keep coming back and
Yeah.
that cause me anxiety? Later, I figured out, oh, I can pair cognitive behavioral therapy, going through these thoughts with these points and actually change the stress response. And then I can
Uh-huh.
actually change them. And then it was like, well, why don't I just do this with my kid? So whenever we're stressed out, whenever he's melting down, when as soon as he's ready, we'll tap it out together. And here's another thing. Here's another thing. This is more men's work than anything else. And you have to be a stronger man, a more uncommon man before you can show up as an uncommon husband or dad. Laughter, man.
Yeah.
So many of us don't laugh. Kids laugh at least 40 times a day. The average of adult is lucky if they laugh 2 times. Really
Yeah.
soothing for the nervous system. My One of the ways that we can help our feminine partners when they're, because a lot of women are really hardened because honestly, we don't step up enough to
Mhm.
create safety for them. So they have to harden, they have to put the armor on to do that. One of the ways
Can I add? I
that
just
we,
want to add a
yeah,
piece
go,
there
go,
too.
go.
There's that, and just for a larger context too, like the conditioning that the feminine is working through is like the impact of the patriarch, the impact of dad, grandpa. Like how many men didn't provide the safety and protection through their younger stages of development? So then that all gets projected onto the masculine of today's time. So it's like it may seem like, hey, we're to blame for everything that's happened. And it's like, no, no, no. There's a part of that of how men are showing up, and the other part is like, hey, this is what they're working through. Like we're working through
Yeah,
our pieces, which we're talking about now. And I just wanted to lay that extra layer of
yeah. They've got generations of trauma as
generations.
females.
Yeah.
And this is somebody talking right now that sat in a women's studies classroom because I thought I was going to get a minor in feminism until the teacher was
Mm.
like, you're the problem, look, pointing at all the men in the room. And I was like, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel right. And this has led me to where I am now. So I'm grateful for that experience. But coming back, one of the best things that we can do is levity, is laugh, is
Uh-huh.
have fun, because life is not that serious. You're sitting here right now, whatever you're stressed out about, no one's dying. At least not in your family. Somebody somewhere is, but nobody in
Yeah.
your family is, right? There's the laughter. There's the
Yeah.
laughter. And if you can bring laughter to the moment, if my wife's stressed out and I can pick her up and spin her around and dip her and give her a big kiss and then be like go about my business, my kids see that. But more importantly, if I can bring that levity to my son, like he's melting down, the worst thing in the world just happened because his sleepy is not on his chair while he's eating dinner. They can only feel 100%. They don't have a choice. It's inconvenient for us. But if I can make it funny, I see you're feeling really sad right now, and I'm gonna like do a handstand or something, do something silly, or
Yeah.
put the sleepy on my head. All of a sudden, it's gone.
Yeah.
We can have fun. We forget
Yes.
about that. That's one of the easiest hacks to help your kids self-regulate is like make them laugh,
Yeah.
and they're gonna have
Yeah.
that skill too.
Oh, game changer. And I love like this is the cool thing. Like how I make sense of the masculine energy is it's the energy of becoming. So it's like orienting from this place of like you get to be a dad in a new way. Like who do you want to become in that? Get fucking creative and envision how you want that to play out with your kids. And this is what I find really empowering is building that orientation, with my son Cedar. And I love feeling that from you. And I love this place where, as men, this is the conversation that's happening. This is the conversation men can tune into because this is what's also needed is the allyship in our nervous systems to feel and learn from others' creativity. Like, so there's already been so many hits that you've shared. And I'm like, fuck, yeah, I'm going to bridge that one in. And for me, and coming back to the play piece, getting creative of like how to accept love, the emotional experience that's happening in our kids' nervous systems, like you named. This is spoken, Gabor Mate speaks about this. Like they can't downregulate their nervous system. So we have to model that by downregulating our own and creating ways of having experiences of it. And the one it comes to the play piece, one that I've loved with Cedar is, he'll like wipe out. He loves to climb. He's just a little athlete. He climbs and just like crawls over things and loves kicking balls and throwing things. And, every once in a while he'll bail. Well, often he bails. And what's been fun is like holding him emotionally and like, oh, and like this is a important one. It's like, this isn't the play part, but kind of is coming in and giving that accurate mirror and reflection back of like, ooh, dude, oh, you really bailed there. Oh, and then just like giving that even facial expression, the breath of like, oh, ouch. And then from that place, like bridging it into the play is what I found really helpful. And with Cedar, one of the tools that I bring is we've built a relationship to, wiping out and hitting something is like, oh, you had a bonka. And then he's like, oh yeah, I had a bonka. Hit on the head, hit on the head. And then he laughs hysterically after he's moved through his emotion. And now that's the new inlay in his nervous system is like, bailing isn't a problem. It's like, ouch, feel through it. And then it's a place of connection because we all pause and we go, oh, bonk on the head. And then it's like, there's the integration back to regulation. Something that you had named earlier is like that vagus nerve. So we're coming into ventral vagal, the social engagement system, which so many of us as men growing up were shamed and like put down and like belittled when something like that would happen. And I just wanted to add this piece that feels important is uh, because we have such brilliant minds, we have the capacity to override what animals in nature does is just shake it out and then shake out all those stress hormones and then reset. Humans have the intelligence to be like, ooh, I didn't like how that felt, taking on a belief about that, numbing and freezing the nervous system so the completion doesn't happen. And now that belief of like, fuck, something's wrong with me. Oh, like I should hide this whole
Yeah.
response. And then there's no completion. So I love that you're speaking to the play because I feel like that's the most epic transmutation of those places that can freeze and numb in the nervous system where there could be a potential of shutting it down and shaming. It's like, hey, let's mobilize this, move it into play and laughter. It's like, boom, you just changed that whole belief system, for the little ones of how they'll make sense of things that happen where there are like oopsies or, and hey, I still have connection. Like, cause God, with the people that I end up supporting, and I imagine for you too, how often do you feel that place that's being processed about the past traumas is it's the loss of connection in the places that were really difficult.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
I'm in this alone.
oh, totally. And so just as we're coming to the end here, I'm curious to hear just some like if there's any pieces that weren't already shared, like what are some really common themes or patterns you notice with the men that you work with? And like what are some tools or some insights or some like just golden nuggets that you feel you have in your toolbox to share with the men and even whoever is listening to this just in the role of parenting, like what would you want to
Yeah,
share
I
there with?
think the most common things will keep it simple. If guys are feeling like tired, they're feeling wiped. A lot of that is because we're hemorrhaging energy because we have these stress patterns running in the background. We have these uh, unaddressed emotions because we've taped over the gauges that is our inner dashboard on our body.
Ooh,
And we're
yeah,
exhausted because we don't deal with it. Instead, we just
yeah,
suppress it and we cover it over with all these tasty snacks, porn, TV, drinks, whatever it is. And if we can face that and transmute it, we can transform it through breath, meditation, movement, whatever, and acknowledge, hey, this is here. I'm allowed to feel this. And now I'm gonna run a pattern interrupt, or not an interrupt, but I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna change, soothe my nervous system with this breath. Then we get our energy back.
Yeah.
If you want to train for patience, well, you have all the tools walking out of this conversation. Do your coherence breath, 5 to 6 seconds in and out. You're gonna create a calmer nervous system. All of a sudden, you're gonna respond to situations. You're gonna have like an extra nanosecond before something comes out of your mouth to evaluate, how do I want to respond in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Or you might even not respond. You might just breathe instead.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be more present, one, you got to soothe your nervous system. Two, you have to to do enough work that you can get out of the beta monkey mind, which is
Uh,
all over the place. And also, when we're living in beta monkey mind, my cat's walking behind the computer. Don't knock stuff over. We get trapped in it,
yeah.
and that's not you.
Mm-hmm.
That's not you that's thinking about the past and the future. If you can breathe, you can actually come into this moment, and you can use your five senses. Easy hack here: your vision, send it out into the space around you,
Yeah.
activates parasympathetic nervous system, your smell, your hearing, your touch, to be here and now with yourself, with your kids too.
Mm-hmm.
Every breath that I breathe, I'm becoming more and more present. Right now, I am here.
Mm-hmm.
That was the mantra that I used when I first started this work, because I was distracted all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't break the stress pattern because I didn't have the tools. You want to
Yeah.
become more energetic, more patient, more present. You can train it that way. You want to be more connected with your kids. Do some breath work, practice your awareness work, bringing your senses in, because literally change your brain waves from beta, stress, you activate alpha, connects you to delta and theta, which are the brain waves of spiritual experiences and deep connection. You want to be more connected with your kids, well, just activate those brain waves. It doesn't really take that much work. You just have to train it using the technology.
Mm-hmm.
It's so simple, but
Mm-hmm.
we overlook it, and it feels kind of like feminine, so we're not going to do it. But man, there's nothing more masculine. You know, the
Yeah.
samurai used to wake up and go stand outside their home with their hand on their hips and do 5, 10, 15 minutes of breath work every single day before doing anything else. Do you know that they used to be dismissed from being a samurai if they were they place a feather under their nose, and if their breathing ruffled the feather, they were not regulated enough. They'd be dismissed. These are men who, dying, bleeding on the battlefield, would pull out paper and write poetry about their final moments.
Mm-hmm.
That's what being uncommon is. And
Fuck
that's
yeah.
what these practices are. They did these practices. And
Mm-hmm.
that is the level of fatherhood, samuraihood, loving level that we owe to our families. Break the cycle so that they don't have to.
Ugh, full body chills on that
Mm,
one. Yeah,
mhm.
brother. Oh, and just what I really feel in that too is like the most effective samurai is going to be the one that integrates the masculine and feminine energies of this body, this vessel, like the regulation and the soothing of the nervous system and the practices that are more of that yin that you're describing. Like that's what allows the beast to be used in a conscious way instead of just chaotically, like the Hulk just blasting through with no awareness. It's like you bring in the awareness and practice that muscle of being in the place of safety in the nervous system and the and that regulation to respond. It's like, whew, that's man as fuck right there.
Different level of being, man. It's
Yeah.
uncommon.
Oh man, God, I could go on for hours here. Thank you so much for bringing you to the table and being open to this conversation and sharing your wisdom. I'm sure everyone listening is also walking away with so many little golden nuggets of how to show up, not just as a dad differently, but as a man differently in partnership. And, this is what I live and breathe, and it excites the hell out of me. So thank you for showing up. And then, so for those who are listening, I know you had mentioned earlier your program is Rise, and if you want to just, yeah, plug a little bit here of what your program is, how people can find you. And, those of you who are listening, I'll add this all in the show notes. So just scroll down and yeah, the floor is
Yeah.
yours there.
So RISE is also known as the Uncommon Dads Accelerator. It's a 12-week initiatory process into uncommon fatherhood, stage 3 fatherhood, beyond the old 1950s fatherhood and beyond the feminized masculinity that I inherited, that I was like, I'm going to go to school for this. So what I do inside of there is the exact things that we're talking about now. Like, yes, we're going to get more fit. Yeah, we're going to eat better. But more than that, I guide men through the work necessary in order to become the cycle breaking and legacy making men, husbands, and fathers that their families really need from them. I teach you the practices necessary, the breath, the meditation, the mindset, the tapping, all of this stuff for you to show up as a pillar of patience, presence, energy, engagement, and deep connection for your family, and really show up at a level of fatherhood that the world has never seen before. We treat this inner strength just like you would treat running a marathon or doing an Olympic lifting competition. It's all sets and reps. It's implementing these practices, the meditation, the breath work, hardcore flexibility, yoga, tapping, all of that to this work so that you can show up as that uncommon father. The age of the average dad has ended. The age of the uncommon dad is here for those of us who are ready to choose it. And that's what I bring forward in the RISE program. You can find me at the Uncommon Dad on Instagram and uncommondads.com because it's about you, it's not about me. You can find the program information there. We're running a cohort this spring that closes April 7th, no, not 17th, April 14th. That cohort closes. If you're not fortunate enough to get in there, I'm running one in the fall. And what I do is if you register early, you're not just going to sit and twiddle your thumbs. Like, you could register for the fall today. It's called being in an incubator, and you're going to receive some coaching every single month so you can start your practices now. Then, when you get to the initiatory process, the 12-week process in the fall, you're even better equipped for it. So that's what's going on, guys. Join me on Instagram, The Uncommon Dad, or go to uncommondads.com, scope out the program, and book a call with me because I'm here to help you.
Oof, mic drop. Oh, thank you so much, Rob. Any of you men tuning in that just felt that heart resonance, that pull, that inspiration to start creating a new experience as a dad, as a man, go follow Rob at the very least, and then, get registered while there's still seats available. God, thank you so much, Rob. It's been such a pleasure just getting to feel you, hear your journey. Yeah, I hope we get to do this again.
Heck yeah, man. Thanks for having me here, Michael.